So yeah, that's my, if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm the Pizza Panther. So I'm a developer at SaltStack. So this is not about SaltStack, so totally different. This is kind of stuff I worked on the side. So yeah, I'm going to talk about Google Actions today. And let's see, let's get started here. So you might be wondering, like, what is a Google Action? So there was the Alexa skill talk yesterday. That's what we're talking about today, but on the Google side of things. So anytime you're speaking with a Google Home, or one of the things that I really liked about the platform is it's in phones. So I have a Chromebook here. It's in Chromebooks, Android Wear, so watches. So it's on multiple devices. It's not just based on voice assistants. It can be text. I guess some of the newer devices coming out now even have a screen. So you can have video and different media also. So all these devices you can write a Google Action for. It's voice-based, but you can send voice, text, images, other media back. So we're going to learn how to build some of these with Python. All right, so first thing you need to know is you have to come in here into your Google Actions console. And I kind of started one just so I could speed things up because it takes a minute or two sometimes. But you'll come in here, you'll create your action. And there's actually several different ways that you can make an action. So they have what's called templates. And so if you come in here after your action, you go build your action, you're going to see all these options. And there's different templates. You don't even actually have to code. They're actually pre-coded kind of examples for you. Some of them hook up to like Google Drive spreadsheets. So you just go in and change the data and you could have a Google Action without, kind of any coding required. But, we're developers, so we're not going to do that today. We're not going to do the easy part. Some of the other options you have, so you can use Dialogflow as kind of their built-in platform. I have other platforms linked here that integrate with Google Actions. These, some of them are point and click and you just fill things in and you can have a Google Action. Some of them you can add APIs, so you could write an API to interact. So how much coding you'll have to do just depends on which of these you use. You're more opinionated, they're more going to lock you into a certain way of doing things, right? And so we want to be cool, hip developers and write everything from scratch. So that's what I'm going to do today. And actually, so you can see some of these. Where's the Dialogflow? I don't even know where it is now because they changed it up. But anyway, we're not going to use any of these options that are on this list. We're going to leave this alone. And we're going to use what's called the Actions SDK. And it's just web requests. So, I'm used to doing web development for many years now. So it's a request response cycle. And, you have requests come in, you respond. And so, if you're a web developer, it's actually pretty easy, pretty basic. Now, the whole natural language stuff, that can get pretty hairy. But, we're going to use this Actions SDK and build a Google Action. So now, this is my very technical diagram that took me many hours to build. I just wanted to kind of go over the process of how a Google Action works. So you're going to pick some name for your action, and it has to be unique. So if someone's taken your name, sorry, you got to pick something else. And whenever someone utters that name, I'm going to try, are they recording this? Because I guess I might make everyone's Google go off if I say the phrase. I don't want to say the phrase. But if you say, okay, talk to whatever the name of your app is, that's going to go through the assistant. And they kind of process, Google processes that, takes the audio, converts it to text for you. So there's a lot of hard work being done just in the background you don't need to worry about. And you're going to have some kind of web endpoint, and there you are coding your stuff up. And you'll get a new intent. And with that, you'll get a conversation ID, so you can track conversations So if someone replies, you know which conversation you're in. So you'll send back some kind of response. Again, goes back through the assistant. It speaks it. That response can be text, and so the Google Assistant will convert that to audio. I'll try to demo my phone if we have enough time. If you're on a phone, it might just show the text. So this is not just voice-based too. It could be text-based. And depending on your bot, maybe the one that I'm going to do today is very simple. So it's just going to have a command and a response. But if you go into some sort of conversation, the user will respond. That comes back. You'll get a different intent, but you'll have the same conversation ID. And then you send request response back and forth. All right, so that's the technical overview. So I created a sample app, and I'm gonna, hopefully the demo gods will approve today, and we'll run this. And I just created a really simple weather app. You probably don't want to do a weather app because Google Assistant already does the weather, but maybe you have a good data source. So this is just a small tornado app that I'm going to showcase here. So anyway, you're going to create your project. I kind of showed that already. And then you're also going to create an action.json. And it's just a JSON file. And I only have one intent here. So the main intent is the intent, where people say, okay, and then whatever the name of your app is. You can have other intents, so like if I wanted to kind of just jump in to like a certain point, like if I'm shopping for something, like, hey, buy me shoes, that might be a different intent. So you can have multiple intents in here. And again, Google will do a lot of the hard work. You can have intents and entities that kind of kick off the conversation and pull out information from that initial conversation. And here's the developer part. You have to give it some kind of public URL. So anything that comes in is basically going to hit this one URL. And it's got to be public. So you can see I'm using a tool called ngrok so that I can run something locally, and it will open up a port to the world so that it can contact my app locally. You could also use like a server and develop on a public server somewhere. But you need something outside of your local network so that the Google Actions API can contact that. Also, this is kind of very important. This took me like a day to figure out. There's multiple versions of the API, and if you don't pin it, different points in the conversation will switch between version 1 and version 2. So like I got it working, and then all of a sudden it broke, and I was like, ah! So make sure you pin your API version so that it doesn't switch between different versions of the API. That took forever to figure out. All right, so now once you have that action.json to kind of define your initial intents, and then where your web server is going to be that's going to handle these intents, you have to upload that. And there's a little command line tool that basically, and actually this command line tool will, if you do the init command, it will give you kind of a template for that JSON. So, or you can copy someone else, up to you. Once you have that JSON, you can either run the test command, or if you're going to put it into production, you can run in the, I think it's the update command. Yeah, you can run the update command to push it through and send a new version of your action out. All right, you'll have to also kind of fill in all the info, which I'm not going to go through. So there's, you want to show up in their action store. So there's a bunch of information you'll have to fill out. Again, you'll have to pick the name of your app, which has to be unique. So you need to fill out kind of all that paperwork. So that happens. And then we're going to create some code, which I'm going to show off. And then, of course, y'all will probably make more money than I will on your action. So then you're going to be awesome, rich developers. So let's kind of show this off, I guess, first. All right, let's see where are we at here. so first of all, I'm going to start my example here. And, nope, I need a Python in there. All right. All right, got my app running. I'm going to bring up my ngrok. Hopefully this connects fast. All right, we're online. All right, so let's go to our Actions console. We want to get rid of that one, and I'm going to switch to my test. So for this talk, I named it the Weather Panther. And so you can see I have uploaded my JSON already. So you can see I have one intent. Like I said, you could have multiple intents to jump to different parts in your app. I only have one. You're going to hit this little test button, and you get a simulator. And this is where you can initially test your action out. Eventually, you'll probably want to test it on some devices also, but actually this works really well. And if we have time, I'll demo it on the phone. So the cool thing is when you hit that test button, wherever you're logged in, whether it's on your assistant or on your phone, they now have access to the test version of your app. So you don't really have to do anything, and it pushes it out to all the devices that you own, which is pretty cool. All right, so let's kind of just demo this first. Let's see. Talk to Weather Panther. Canyon Lake. Oh, I gotta hit that. Canyon Lake. The temperature in Canyon Lake is 79 degrees. So there you go. And you can see, so I only have kind of text interface, but if you have different kinds of responses, so this is the response that I'm sending. And I'm going to go over this, but you can see what it might look like on an Android phone if you're using the Google Assistant. Different things come in. So let's kind of go over that. So yeah, we talked about the simulator. We talked about using a real device. So let's look at what comes in and what goes out. So I took basically some of the inputs that I got from this app when I was building it and kind of saved them off in this repository. So it looks something like this. Again, it's just JSON. There's our conversation ID. So again, as we're in the conversation, when I was in that simulator, I basically had two steps. So I got one intent, I got the main intent, I got that new conversation ID. I spoke a response, that's the response intent. That same conversation ID follows that along. And you can check the capabilities of the device. So you could actually, if you really wanted to, figure out whether this is just a voice interaction, whether it has a screen, maybe send back different responses depending on what it is. Again, it's easier if you just send text back because that will scale up on any of these devices. But depending on what you're doing, you might want to do something different. So again, right, there's our intent. So we know it's the main intent. We know that conversation is starting. Again, right, the assistant does kind of all the hard work of converting that audio to text for us. So that's the request that comes in. You could also do stuff based on the user. So I don't have mine to gather any user data, but I do get a unique user ID for that session. If you turn on the user data permission, then you can track users not just in a conversation, but between conversations and different conversations. So this will change. This is because I don't have that permission on. But if you ask for that permission, you could base things or keep that user's Google profile somewhere in a database somewhere. All right. So what's your? I guess before I go into this one, let's look at this here. Question? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so since this is my main intent, your main intent's always going to look like something like this, where it's talk to your app. Now, if you add other intents, yeah, you can make what's called an entity. So you can basically have like variables. And so, yeah, you could say, talk to Mr. Weather about, and then just suck up the rest of that text.
No, what I'm saying is, I don't know what the user is going to say.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask a question.
Well, they have to start your app first. So that would probably maybe be the second step in your app.
Okay, so the second step can be freeform. So
Yes.
any string.
Yeah, and so that response intent, so these intents here kind of are the initial kickoff. After that, by doing it this way from scratch, yeah, the second thing, that's kind of up to you now to parse it and extract what you want.
So we get the full string.
Yeah, yeah.
If they ask, like, is it going to rain today?
So again, that could be another intent that you put in this action.json, or it could be something that you wait for the response. It just depends on how you want to design your app. So, this will help with initial. So yeah, you could have as an intent, you could have, I don't know, we'll call it the weather intent. Talk to Mr. Weather, is it going to rain today? So, and you could make maybe part of that sentence a variable or an entity that it would parse and kind of give you that phrase. So it depends, how you want to design your conversation. But this one's pretty simple. I'm just getting to start, and then I'm responding with a question and expecting something back. So let's look at the output. All right, so this is the output. And like I said, if you can keep it text, right, that's going to scale between different platforms more easily. And I'm using what's called SSML. So SSML is a markup language for making things that speak out loud. And it's like HTML, but it's for voice interactions. And there's actually all kinds of different things you can do with SSML. So you can put in pauses or emphasize like a certain piece of text, right? And so this is really scalable if you use the SSML, because if they're on a phone texting, all the markup kind of goes away. But if it's speaking it, you would hear the different emphasis and spacing and rhythm of whatever you want to put. Now, with that said, let's look at the responses here. And SSML is a standard, so works on the Alexa, works on Google. They don't support all of the spec yet, so, and I don't know which supports which, but they don't support all of the options yet. So just be careful with that. But it is something you can reuse on many other voice platforms, which is nice. But anyway, getting back to the responses, you can have different kinds of responses. So let's see if I can find it in here. And probably now that I'm speaking, oh, here we go. So, I just did a simple response with voice and text. If you've ever seen, like on the phone, and you ask for weather from the Google Assistant, it brings up like a card. So it speaks what the weather is, but it also brings up a card, and you get little pictures of the weather for the week. So you can have different kinds of responses, send a card, send some media. So the carousel, I believe, is what's used if you want to send a recipe. So they have different structured carousels. So recipe is one of the main things that people use the Google Assistant and Alexa for. I think it just came out like last week. The top two things people use their assistant for is timers and recipes. So anyway, there's different kinds of responses that you can send back. If you send back a media response, you could send back audio. But if you did that, you would want to make sure that they have audio output capability before you send some audio back. All right, so that's kind of what you get in, what you can send out. Also, you probably want to put some security. You know, you're going to have this open endpoint, and you don't want just like people sending stuff to your endpoint and maybe trying to gather data about your users.
The question that was in the response, what city you want the weather for?
Yes.
How are you handling the response?
Oh, so yeah, I guess I kind of, so down here, you can tell basically the Google Assistant that, hey, I'm expecting a response. So I'm asking a question. So now if I put false for expecting a response, that would end the conversation.
So the handler for this user response, is that in your example code?
Yeah, I guess I can go over that real quick. So that's probably good to go over. So yeah, let's look at that. So again, this is a Tornado app. Let's see. So whenever it calls your endpoint, you're getting a post request. So that's my post request. I'll go over to security here in a second. So you can see decoding the JSON, looking at the intent, and actually that should come through my console. So you can see the first intent came in, the main intent, and then the response intent came in. And you can see, right, the conversation ID stayed the same. And let's see, where was that code? So now, you know, again, mine is very simple. So if it's the main intent, I send the start conversation response. If it's the other intent, I actually use the Open Weather Map API. So I get the city from that response, I look it up, and then send the temperature back.
Any phrase,
Yeah.
paragraph.
So yeah, you were expecting, yeah. So if I don't give it kind of any of these to look back, right, I just get a blob of text now. And I can do all kinds of crazy stuff, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But let's talk about security.
Access to the user's location.
That's another permission you can ask for. So you can ask for a location permission also. Yeah. All right, so security. We probably want to verify that our requests are coming from Google, right? That might be a good thing, especially if you have user information. So if you look at their kind of examples, it's all in Node. And we don't want Node, right? We're Python people. So I spent the time and figured out how to do it in Python. Oops. So a request will come in. It's actually signed. This is the Google OAuth 2 code. If you install that, the Google Python client, we can get the token that comes in, and then we can verify it. So we make sure that it's actually signed by Google and not just someone hitting up our endpoint. And so if you look at the code here, the token comes in from an authorization header. So I get that header. I'm checking, so the authorization request or verification is actually an API call. So, you know, if that's not a valid JSON web token, I don't want to make it. I can speed up my app a little bit. So I'm just verifying right there to make sure it is a JSON web token. And then if it is, I'm also checking the project ID. So that's some kind of checks that I can do myself pretty fast. And if it passes all those fast checks, then I go ahead and verify that it came from Google. So yeah, this is not like published on their docs anywhere. So this is actually pretty important. If, like I said, this particular app doesn't really matter because I'm not storing any user data, but you know, if you're doing something personal, you probably want to put something like this in. All right, so let's talk about, I want to kind of go over some of the libraries, and there's been actually a few talks yesterday. If you want to go like deep dive into like natural language processing and different things like that, go listen to those talks. I'm not going to go really deep into that at all. But with that said, depending on what you're doing, you might rely on Google to basically do all the hard work for you. So like this weather app, I don't really need a lot of natural language processing. So I just need some of my standard web tools. You need some way to open up, again, a port to the outside world to run your app. So I used ngrok, which is a great tool. You'll need some kind of way of building a web app. So Tornado, Flash, Django, those are kind of like some of the popular ones. Again, there's actually a lot of great talks. So there's a Raza talk yesterday. Go check that out. So, if you're getting more into conversational aspects of this, where like this is more of like, hey, just give me the weather, or like searching for something, you might need one of these libraries. So I'm going to point out a couple of the interesting ones, though. So Dialogflow, if we go back, right, that was on my first slide as like the platform where you could go in and fill out a GUI and do stuff, right? But they also have an API. So you could start off from scratch, use their Python client, and kind of maybe be more flexible with Dialogflow, right? Instead of having to kind of follow their UI and how they want you to do things. So, again, right, Google does all the processing, so we don't need any of this audio stuff, but we could use some of this text stuff to, still get the power of Dialogflow without having to kind of go through their platform or their opinionated view of things. Some of the other cool ones too. So I actually teach at a boot camp too, part-time. And I had a student who wanted to make a Google action that talked like Yoda. So you would talk to it. I tried to find it, but I couldn't find it. You would talk to it. It would take your text and convert it to how Yoda would say it. And so he actually found an API that would convert normal speech to Yoda speech. But then he had to make that speech sound like Yoda, right? So you have some options when you go through your application of how you want it to sound, but they're kind of limited. And again, SSML, you could actually do some of this maybe in SSML because you can change pitches and put different spacing in and pauses. But again, right now it's kind of limited. Even on Alexa, both platforms, the SSML support is kind of limited. With that said, though, on both platforms, they have different APIs for creating speech from text. And you have like tons of options to make different characters. You could generate voices on the fly or maybe pre-generate text. You could also speak, right? Remember, so we have media capabilities, so you could record someone. But so even though he was writing Google Action, he actually used Amazon Polly, and he figured out how to make it sound like Yoda. He like took one of the pre-canned voices and kept on tweaking it until it sounded like Yoda, and it was pretty good. So yeah, if I ever find it, I'll tweet it out or something. But you have a lot more options of basically, so if your app was something more creative, like maybe reading a kid's book, right? And you could have different characters. You can use Amazon Polly or the Google Cloud text-to-speech to create different voices at different times in your app, which is pretty cool. All right, how am I doing on time here?
Yeah, anytime for questions.
Okay. All right, so let's show this, and I'll take some questions here. I'll show the demo too on the Android phone. Let's see if I can do it here so we can see the same thing. Again, you eventually want to do this on a device to test it out. Let's see how many people's phones go off. Okay, Google. Now it's not going to work. Okay, Google. Talk to Weather Panther. No. Oh, you know what? I might have to go hit the test button. So your tests will eventually kind of time out. So we'll try it one more time, and if not, I'll take a question. It says it's working. Okay, Google. Talk to Weather Panther.
Okay, let's get
Here we
this
go.
version of Weather Panther.
What city would you like the weather for?
San Francisco.
The temperature in
Yay, it's 65. You're warmer than Texas. I mean, colder than Texas. All right. So yeah, that's how it would look on a phone. All right, let's take some questions.
Okay, Google.
Can I make a simple app where I don't actually have to have a conversation, just one declarative command? Okay, Google, will it rain on Vicky today?
Yeah, sure. So you just have that main intent, and then whatever that main intent responds with and ends the conversation, it's done. So yeah.
How much money do you earn from writing it? No, seriously, like compared to Alexa's skill.
You know what? I have no idea because I didn't charge for mine. So I tried to win some money in a contest and I didn't win, so I'm kind of bitter about that. But I don't know what the. I don't even know if you can charge.
I mean, apparently
these
you can earn a
actions.
free T-shirt or you can earn some Google
Yes.
Cloud credit. But
Yeah.
I mean, compared to Alexa's skill, it's
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't
like
tried any of the monetization. Now, with that said, if you use the user permission, I think probably the more better way or the way that you'll actually make money is if people can buy stuff, right? So
in-app purchase.
yeah, they could do it. Yeah, exactly, like an in-app purchase, yeah, of some sort. Or if you're charging for like a service or something like that. But yeah, I don't know if you can charge for the actions or not. I haven't tried that. So
I don't think you can charge, but apparently Google will give you credit, but it's not clear how much, how many thousand hits you need, stuff like that.
yeah, so like since I've created this, they've sent me some cloud credits and stuff like that. But yeah, that's not like making money on your app, right?
But ultimately, it's not a marketplace, really, per se.
Well, they do have kind of like an app store, so, but yeah, I don't know if you can charge for your action per se.
How many of those voice commands could you add? Like, is there a limit or?
Yeah, I mean, you can make, I'm sure there's a limit in this console to how many you can make, but you know, you got to pick 2 words, so, you know, there's my Neutron Academy, there's my Weather Panther, but yeah, I think they limit the number of projects you can create, but I don't know what that limit is.
So do I have to worry about like namespaces, like if there's a different input query to start the app? Like say I want to like override the weather app that's the original, but want to keep the same name.
Yes, so I mean, so first of all, with your name, right, someone could take, it's like a domain name, right? Someone could take that name first. But also, yeah, you'll want to, your intents, you'll want to structure them so that there's less confusion. So yeah, it could be a possibility. You'll have to kind of design your conversations. Yeah.
For the user input, instead of the text value, can you get the actual audio or the SSML version of that audio?
From what I've done so far, they've only sent me text, so I don't think you can get the audio. They basically converted the text for you. So because, you know, it could come from your phone or an assistant. So they always give you the text.
Great, thanks, Paul.
All right. If you have any questions, ask me.